Welcome everyone to part 2 of DeFi 101 lesson. In the first part, we covered the main characteristics of DeFi and CeFi and what are the advantages and disadvantages of using each of them. Now, in the second part, I will dive deeper into the DeFi applications. So DeFi, we all heard about DeFi stack, right? So the DeFi is built on top of a decentralized smart contract platform, and within the DeFi ecosystem, there are different layers and roles. So at the bottom, there is a settlement layer where the transactions are committed on the blockchain and usually keeps an immutable log. On top of the blockchain, there is the asset layer, which implements different assets. One is the native protocol assets, which in the case of Ethereum network is ETH. There are also different types of assets which are implemented as smart contracts. For example, ERC20 type of assets, which are called fungible tokens, and the ERC721 standard for the non-fungible tokens. On top of the asset layers, there is the protocol layer, where different types of financial services are implemented. For example, decentralized exchanges, lending, derivatives, asset management, etc. Those protocols are implemented as smart contracts and get executed on the smart contract platform. Application layer is a user interface layer where users interact with the DeFi protocols. And the last layer is aggregation layer, which can aggregate different applications into one user-facing application. For example, a wallet can help users utilize different types of financial DeFi applications and protocols in one application. DeFi applications also need to interact with each other and with the outside world. So, for example, a blockchain is a distributed database with atomic settlement and may need to interact with another blockchain which have different types of financial assets. To do that, they need a bridge that connects the two blockchains. Also, the DeFi applications on top of the blockchain may need information from outside the world. So, for example, it may need pricing information from centralized exchanges or different types of off-chain real-world assets, and an oracle can help provide such information by bringing them onto the blockchain. So in practice, the DeFi world can also operate side by side with the CeFi, and there are connections between the two different financial worlds. So, for example, we already discussed the Oracle in the prior slide, and how Oracle can help bring information from CeFi into the DeFi world. On the other hand, there are some DeFi assets whose reserves are actually held in the CeFi world. And therefore, the CeFi and DeFi worlds, they connect with each other. So they're not completely silos. So there are always interactions between the two of them. There are different types of DeFi services that have already been built. This slide is a little bit old, but you can just kind of exponentially quadruple those number of protocols which are there. But essentially, any service that you can think of in CeFi, it has a counterpart in the DeFi. For example, DeFi services for exchanges and trading, lending, insurance, asset management, and so on. So let's look at a few examples of those DeFi building blocks and services. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is asset tokenization, which is the core of DeFi. This is how DeFi assets are created. Tokenization is essentially the process of adding new assets to a blockchain, and the token is the blockchain representation of that asset. That token representation makes assets more accessible, easy to transfer, and programmable. So there are different types of tokens, for example, governance tokens, where the holders can vote and decide the future development or decide on the important decisions on the protocol. There are security tokens, which, for example, represent tokenized physical assets, such as tokenized real estate. And there are other type of token assets, such as NFT, the non-fungible tokens, and stablecoins. One of the most important type of tokens, especially for the DeFi services, are called stablecoins. As you may notice, there are a lot of tokens, tradable tokens, and their price can be very volatile. But some DeFi applications need a type of assets that has a more stable price, and therefore there was a lot of kind of incentives and motivations to actually to create a token that its price it's pegged to either kind of fiat or different type of assets, but it has lower volatility. So those stablecoins essentially are tokens whose price, as I said, is pegged to a certain type of asset, such as fiat or precious metals. And there are several ways to create those stablecoins. For example, off-chain, which is centralized, with the collateral being fiat or precious metals, or on-chain, which is more decentralized, and the collateral for that is their digital assets, crypto assets. There's also another way, which is called algorithmic, which the collateral sometimes can be no collateral, but sometimes can be partial collateral stablecoins. Okay, another example of the DeFi building blocks is decentralized exchanges. An exchange is a marketplace that allows the trading of different financial assets, and traditionally this has been done through centralized exchange. Like any other centralized financial services, a centralized exchange holds custody of users' assets. And there have been many attacks on centralized exchanges. The most famous one is the attack on Mt. Gox in 2014, where over 800,000 bitcoins were stolen, and at that time, the value was over 450 million. 2019, for example, alone had over 12 centralized exchanges being attacked, with more than 300 million worth of crypto stolen, but it can also be caused by Rogue's CEO. We all kind of know about the FTX, and those CEOs simply can take users' money, and they can mingle those money with either different kind of companies that are also owned by them, or they can make investments, and if they turn poor, then the users is losing the money, or they even take the money for their own benefit and walk away. So in contrast, the decentralized exchanges provide a number of advantages, and one is that users take custody of their assets, and the decentralized exchanges provide full transparencies on how the transactions and trades have happened. So now, if we go back to centralized exchanges, try to understand exactly technically how they're different. So the centralized exchanges determines the trade using an order book where sellers and buyers put up their books and they get matched on the centralized exchange. And then the trade gets settled. So decentralized exchanges allow different type of auto matching to facilitate the trade. For example, there is an AMM, which is automated market making, and also there are other methods such as reserve aggregator and so on. The biggest decentralized exchange so far is Uniswap, and over time, the trading volume on decentralized exchange has grown dramatically. In fall 2020, it was the first time when Uniswap trading volume exceeded the centralized exchange Coinbase trading volume. And this is a great example on how a decentralized exchange such as Uniswap, built with such a small team, can actually become so powerful and overtake such a big company as a Coinbase, which is now publicly traded.